Right, so today we are going to be listening to our next instructor for the Developer Marketing Bootcamp, and his name is Solomon. Solomon is an experienced software engineer. He is a content creator and founder of Mastering Backend with over 5 years experience working across multiple front end and back end technologies to design and build high performing, scalable, and innovative applications that follow best practices and industry standards in a variety of workplaces from startups to larger consultancies. Mr. Solomon, you have our attention now.
All right. So you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
All right. So moving on, my name is Solomon Eseme. I'm a software engineer and a documentation engineer. All right. So that's just it. And I'm going to explain deeper the differences between documentation engineering and technical writing as we progress. But for now, I tend to do more of documentation engineering job these days than technical writing. All right. So today we are going to be talking about the importance of technical writing. And we are going to also look at writing good technical documents, right? And next, we are going to explore how to use Markdown to write articles. Okay. At the same time, we are going to look at how to write good blog posts and guides. So blog posts can be divided into a lot of different types of content, but we are going to be looking at two types, which are tutorials, which we normally call blog posts, and how-to guides. Next, we're going to look at content distributions and where to share your content. Basically, we are going to relate all this topic to developer marketing, curriculum. So if you're a developer marketer, what are the importance of technical writing, and how can you use it to improve your developer marketing journey? All right, so moving on, let's look at first technical writing and documentation engineering, because I said I was going to explain that. So technical writing is basically explaining complex systems or complex context or content or information into simpler terms. All right, so it could be anything, right? It could be writing about generators, it could be about writing about any technological, equipment or whatever. But what you tend to do is that you tend to break down that system into simpler or clearer formats. So for example, you can write user guides. If someone buys a new generator, right, the person would need a guide to be able to operate that generator, right? So that is what a technical writer does. You write that, you break down that complex system into step-by-step processes that that user can use to operate that system. Okay, so technical writing could be any of that, but in developer marketing, right, we are referring it to you are writing for developers, right? So you have a system, you have a product that developers are using, or developers that is the core focus, that the core focus is for developers. And you need to take this product to developers. So one way that you can do that is through technical writing. You either break down these products into simpler terms, letting the users know exactly the features of these products, letting them know exactly where and how they can use it to solve their problems. You could do this in different formats, right? You could do this either via written content or either via video content. You can even do this either via communications like meetups, public speaking, all of these different angles. But mostly today, we are going to be focusing mainly on the written content. Okay, so that's for technical writing. And then for documentation engineering, it's a little bit more into developing, right? Because here, you're not just creating the content, you're presenting the content, right? So you are either creating a blog to show this content or to present this content, or you're creating normally what we call documentation, like official documentation, right? Just to present the content that you've written. Okay, so documentation engineering goes deeper into presentation, while the technical writing part goes into creating the content. All right, so that's just the difference. Okay, so for today, we are going to be looking at the importance of technical writing to developer marketing. So number one, it's a form of communication with developers. Like I said, you can communicate with developer or share your products or whatever with developers in different formats. And number one, I said written content, which is the technical writing part, right? So if you need to communicate with developers, you need to do it either by writing content that developers are going to read and understand, right? And then be able to take action with the content that you've written. Okay, so technical writing helps in conveying complex technical information in a clear and concise manner, right? Now, developers often need detailed documentation or guides or what we call tutorials, right? To understand and implement a product or technology. Okay, so a developer marketing manager relies on technical writing to effectively communicate the values or the value proposition and functionality of the products to the developer community. All right, so like I said, majorly we use written communication to be able to pass message to developers about our products. And that's exactly what technical writing helps you to do. Okay, so you can use video if you are good with creating video. So they are all still technical, but this time it's not writing. So you can say technical content or technical videos, all right? All right, so next we have building credibility. Now, high quality technical documentation contributes to the credibility of the product or technology. Now, this is very clear because one, for example, you are a developer and you keep building things, and at some point you get stuck. You visit Google, you search for whatever you are stuck with, and you are presented with a website, right? When you visit that website, that article or that content solves your problem nicely. So you go back, you continue with what you're building, and then you hit another roadblock. You go to Google again, and then you search, and that same website comes up and solves the problem. Okay, so if that continues over time, what you're going to try to do is you're going to try to look at the website and see what they do. All right, maybe try to get to know more about them a little. Okay, so gradually like that, you are already trusting that website to be able to provide the information that you may need while building a certain product. And that is the way you build trust, or that is one way that the business builds trust amongst developer by solving their problems. Okay, so if a developer constantly receives solution to their problems, either through articles, through videos, or whatever means that they use to communicate, if they constantly receive these solutions to their problem, they are going to trust your website, or they are going to trust you. And when someone trusts you, of course, you know you can sell to the person easily. All right. So developers are more likely to trust and adopt a product that comes with well-written documentation. Of course, this documentation that I'm mentioning is not just the normal official documentation that your product has. It's more into the different education that you provide to users via content, via written content, or maybe video content. All right. So a developer marketing manager can leverage technical writing to build and enhance the credibility of the products they are promoting. So you need to be able to use your product to solve developers' problems, not just by having the app there, but by the way you present it, by the way you write content that shows developer how they can use your product to solve their problem. So by doing this constantly, you are building credibility amongst the developers community. All right. So next we have developer education. So I think I've expressed more on this. So developer marketing managers often engage in educational initiatives to empower developers with knowledge and skills needed to use their product effectively. So most of the time, these contents that you are putting out there are in form of education to developers. You are showing, right? You are showing developers exactly the challenges that they have and how your product can solve these challenges, right? So by doing this, you are educating the developers. And of course, everybody knows that once you keep receiving value from a particular place, you're going to most likely trust that place for more information. All right, so technical writing is a key component of this educational process. All right, so providing resources such as tutorials, API references, code samples that enables developers to learn and apply the technology. So the more you provide tutorials, the more you write, the more you share insights into the industry or into the developer industry, the more developer comes to resonate with you and at the same time resonate with the products that you're trying to sell. Okay, so as a developer marketing manager, it is supposed to be one of your core duties to educate the developers, not just about your product. Your product is there, but more about developer. Okay, so educate the developer about their problems and their immediate solution, and then try to infuse in your product into how they solve these challenges. All right, so next we have product adoption and retention. Of course, after these educational phases, the next process is infusing your product into these contents that you're creating. Okay, so product adoption and retention. Developers are more likely to adopt to a product if they can easily understand how to use it. Now, how to use it comes as a result of the previous education that you've provided. So they now know that how to easily adapt to your product, how to easily use it, and how to find solutions whenever they are stuck somewhere. All right, next, so we have clear and comprehensive technical documentation helps developers onboard quickly and reducing the learning curve and increasing the likelihood of product adoption. Moreover, well-maintained documentation supports long-term product retention as developers can refer back to it for ongoing use and troubleshooting. Okay, so we all know that if a product has a very simple and clear onboarding system, we are going to developers are going to use that product more than a product that is very difficult to onboard. Okay, so that is the reason why you notice that some companies are investing more into the onboarding process for their products. All right, and one of the best ways to do that is to create content that shows exactly how to quickly, all right, how to quickly make use of the product before you start going deeper into using the product. Okay, so if you look at most documentation, you will notice that there is something they call getting started. So that getting started page is one of the most important page in documentation, because first, that is where the onboarding starts. It gives a very clear and direct example of how to use the product. And if you need more solution, or if you need more complex solution to your problem, you can go deeper into the documentation. All right, so there's actually a lot of importance that technical writing brings to developer marketing, but for now, we're going to move on to writing good technical content. So I've actually changed it from writing good documentation, right, to writing good technical content. Because as I have explained, documentation engineering is more into presenting than actually creating. All right. So to write good content, right, there's a nice approach that I follow, and I'm going to share that with you guys. So the first one is define your audience. If you want to write content that resonates with people, you can't write for everybody, right? So if you're writing an article, don't assume that you're writing for everybody, because at the end of the day, you are writing for nobody, okay? So define a clear audience or niche or whatever set of people that you want to write for. If you want to write for beginners, go deeper a little. Beginners in what? All right, beginners in what aspect? Okay, so don't just say I want to write for beginner, because that is a very broad category of people, and you might not really target as much individual as you want. Okay, so use the strategy of narrowing down your audience to a specific set of people that you want, and then talk to them directly. Okay, so that is that for define your audience. When you have a technical content idea or proposed topic to work on, the first thing you need to do is to research the audience that intends to consume your technical content. It's very important, because you can't write for everybody, like I have emphasized. This knowledge lays a clear path for you to determine the tune, the voice, and the tenses of the technical content. The reason for this is so that you talk to the person directly, okay? So I don't know if you guys you've read an article and then you notice that that article really resonates with you and your problem. You immediately trust the person or trust the article to solve your problem. Okay, so that is the kind of emphasis you need to lay when creating article, and you start by defining who you want to write for. Okay, so it's important it is more impressive rather to write for a specific target audience than to try to cover everyone. Okay, so this makes your technical content more impactful and useful to the unique audience that you want to write for. Okay, so to solve this problem of targeting your audience, I have some questions that I ask myself when I want to start that research. So I say, who am I writing this piece of content for? Are they beginners? Are they advanced? Are they experts? Now, what is their profession? So are they beginners, developers? Are they beginner designers? If they are developers, what language are they using? Are they in PHP or are they in JavaScript? All right. So next, I say, what knowledge is required before reading these technical content? Okay, so this is like prerequisites. What knowledge is required before you can be able to read this content? Okay, so of course there are more questions, but this is my base anytime I want to define an audience for my technical content. So next we have define the content goal, right? So you can't just sit down and start writing article. You need to know the end product of what you're writing, because it's very important. Someone needs to read your article from start, and then getting to the end, the person should be able to have a tangible result of spending that amount of time on your article. Okay, so if you write an article and there is no end product and there is no goal, The person might finish reading it because of how the article is structured. Maybe it is very interesting. The person might finish reading it, fine, but the person won't read another article of yours, right? So you need to keep the user, testing for more by always defining the end product of the content and making sure that you achieve that end product. So the next important factor is to determine the goal of your technical content before you start writing. Okay, so if you want to write an article on how to install Node.js, okay, so that title already gives you a goal. At the end of this tutorial, you want to make sure that the user is able to install Node.js. Okay, so you can extend the goal a little or contrast it a little by saying how to install Node.js in Windows, how to install Node.js in Mac OS. Okay, but if you want to go broad, you can say how to just install Node.js. And here now, this one you're going to cover both for Windows, both for Linux, and both for Mac. Okay, so always make sure that you define the goal and you also define the people you are writing for. Okay, so the most important factor of every technical content you produce is to provide value, and value is the end goal of your article. Okay, so the value you want to provide to the technical content will determine how you structure the content. Okay, so you think through this process. If you want to write, if your end goal is to tell the user how to install Node.js, you already know that this is a how-to guide. It's not a complete tutorial. All right. So that gives you a structure of how you should structure your article. Okay, so we are going to discuss how to write how-to guides and also how to write tutorials. But the end goal helps you with determining the structure of your content. For instance, if you want to create a technical content that shows a reader how to build X products with Y technology, okay? From the goal, you understand that you will need to show code samples, all right? You need to show step-by-step guides with the knowledge gotten from determining the goal of your technical content. And your content will be structured or presented in a way that delivers value. Okay, so to determine the goal of your contents, I usually ask myself some of these questions. The first one I said, what will the reader achieve from reading the content? So you need to make sure that you answer this question, this particular one, and you need to make sure rather that you infuse the answer into your article. So if your article does not have the answer to this question, it's a complete waste of time for the user, for the reader, because the reader is not going to get the end product or the goal of the particular article that is reading. Okay, so next question is, what will my reader gain from this technical content? Okay, now what problem will my readers be able to solve after reading this content? Okay, so these are some of the questions that you need to answer yourself when you want to create content that developers are going to love. All right. So next we have define your content brief. So this is optional actually. I usually do this when I don't have much content to write. Okay. So content briefs are actually important. They give you context for the type of technical content you are creating. So since you are a developer marketing manager, this is going to be mostly your job to create content brief for maybe technical writers in your team to work with. Okay, so you create this content brief. Aside from creating the overall content strategy, you create content briefs for each of the topics that you want your writers to create, and then you share it to them. All right. So a content brief is a summary of what the content is supposed to achieve. So it comes with the audience definition, it comes with the primary and secondary keywords, and then the goal of the technical content, the competitors' content to draw insight. So there's a lot of things that a content brief can include or can come with. And of course, your team or you are going to determine what you put inside your content brief. But I've listed a few examples of the things that I include in my content briefs to give me more insight into the article that I want to produce. So this document is more like a guide. If you give it to somebody, or if you give it to your team member will be able to follow this guide to create a technical content that resonates with what you're looking for. Okay, so this document is the result of the above research for determining your audience and the goal of the technical content. Okay, sometimes, right, companies actually give you this. If you're a freelance technical writer and you're writing for different blogs, so sometimes company gives you these documents just to help you with what you're writing. Okay, but since you're a developer marketer, you need to determine or you need to create content briefs for yourself and also for your team members in case you have technical writers under you. All right, so once that is out, this is more like a planning stage for your content. The next is to write your outline. Okay, so mostly I don't start writing content except I have an outline. Okay, so from the content brief, I now know exactly what the content is all about. I have links to competitors' content that I can look into and see some of the things that they are missing and some of the things that their users like about the content. Okay, so with all this research about the topic and about the audience and everything, I can now generate an outline to give me a clear direction of what the final content will look like. Okay, so an outline is more like a map that guides you to a destination. All right, so as a technical writer, it is important you invest a little time in developing a great content outline for your technical content. Personally, I use this approach to produce high quality technical content fast. So how do I really create outline? Okay, so I'm going to talk about that, but for now, to produce a great template for your content outline, you need to follow this approach. First, every content outline should contain the following. Number one, it should have content outline points, and of course, content outline subpoints. Okay, so if you are to create a content, let's say building to-do app with Express.js, all right? Just a rough guess, your outline is going to be like this: introduction, prerequisites, what is Express.js, overview of the to-do app that you want to build, of course. And then next is building a to-do app with Express. And then you can say summary or conclusion. So these are your top points that you want to talk about. These are the things that you want this article to achieve. And then the sub-points are those topics that comes under each of these top main points that you've listed. Okay, so you can go deeper to create a content, to create an outline rather, that looks like this. Okay, I wanted to share this, but I think I can't. Let me just read it out. Okay, so introduction, and then under introduction, you have why learn Express.js. Why is it important to build a to-do app as a beginner? So this is under introduction. And then under prerequisites, what you should know before reading this content. That is one of the sub-points. And then where to learn them, another sub-point. And then under what is Express.js, you have overview of Express.js and why you need to learn Express.js. Those are the two sub-points that you can include. Of course, you can include more or less depending on the topic that you choose under your main point. And then next we have overview of the to-do app. So discuss the to-do app logic, that is one. Discuss the architecture, that is two. And how to structure a to-do app, that is three. Okay, and then next we have building a to-do app. So here install, some of the sub points would be install Express.js, creating index.file, creating to-do app objects, or maybe a database or something to store these different to-dos that will be created. And then one of the sub points will be building the app. And then lastly, we'll have previewing the app. Okay, so lastly, we have conclusion. So here we'll have something like recap the important lessons, summarize the outline, and then call to action. So this is where you now introduce your products or whatever. Okay, so if you look at the outline, like from what I'm saying, you will notice that you already have a mental picture of what the full content is going to look like. So when you have an outline like this, you don't deviate from it. Okay, so if you have anything to change, or if you have new knowledge or whatever you want to add to the article, you go back to the outline process and update it before you go back to writing. Okay, so you don't change the outline so that you don't deviate from your main points. Okay, so moving on here. After you've created your outline and you are satisfied with what you have, actually spend a lot of time creating outlines. And like I said, this is my process. So I visit like 5 different websites at least. So if I have a topic, I take the topic, search it on Google, or if I have a content brief, I should have already have like my competitors' website, right? So I go to these different competitors' website. Number one thing, I check for the things that users like about that content, and then I check for things that are missing in that content. Okay, so I write those as my outline, and then I do a little bit more research on like 5 different websites, and then I compare and contrast and see the most important topics, and also the most important topics that were not covered, and the most important topic that were, less covered, like they didn't cover properly, and then I cover those. Okay, so that's how I generate my contents. That's how I generate my outlines, rather. All right, so after you have an outline, right, so the next thing is doing research. So because you have a direction, because you have a way or something to write your article about, it will now be easy for you to do research, narrowing down to the outline that you have. Okay, so this is where the work starts actually. Doing research is 60% of the article completed. All right, so now you have a clear understanding of the technical content you want to produce. The next step is to jump into intensive research about the technologies involved and how you intend to pass the value. So that is very important. Number one, you need to look at the technologies that you are writing about. So for example, in our outline, we were writing about Express. So you need to, take a deeper research about Express, and understand Express itself. And then now think of how you intend to pass the value through your article. Okay, so if there are so many to-do apps built with Express, and many articles are there showing you how to do that. So how are you going to be different? How are you going to pass your own message to captivate the users who want to read your article? That is mostly what you do research about. Okay, so research is very important for every high quality content. That is why every great content is split into 60% research, 10% writing, 10% editing, and 20% distribution. Okay, so research takes a whole lot of a moving amount of 60%, and that's a lot. So you need to spend time on articulating how you want to pass your message and making sure that you get yourself familiarized with all the technologies that you want to talk about. All right. So research is also a continuous process, and it started right from when you define the audience, the goal of the content, and come up with the content briefs. So while you were doing all that, you were actually still doing research. So it's a continuous process, like I've stated. So even while you're writing your articles, you're continuously doing research to make sure that you provide the best value for your readers. So like I've said before, yeah, what I do is you can research through the top ranking content, technical content on the same topic from search engine of your choice. And after researching, studying, and understanding the technologies and gaining authority over the topic, you can start writing. So it's important that you gain authority over the topic. So if you want to write about Express, it's important that you know Express to some extent that you can pass real value. Okay, so here are some of the things that I write down when I'm doing research. Maybe I'm visiting top 5 content on that particular topic I want to write about. So what is missing in this article that you research? Okay, so you have an idea already about building to-do list app with Express. Okay, and here you are with another article talking about how to build that same to-do list app with Express, and you're reading through it. So from your own experience, what is missing in that article? So write those down, and then what interests you the most? So while you read this person's article, what are the most interesting things that catches your attention? Also write those down, and then check the comment section rather. Check the comment section for what readers are saying. So if there are comments, check through that. What are the readers saying? Are they satisfied? Is something missing? Do they have any question concerning that, whatever the person wrote about? So pick that out and then write it as one of your topics. So how do they structure the content? What was their step-by-step process? Was it easy for you to grasp through what they are talking about, or it wasn't? So write it down so that you can make your own easy if theirs wasn't. Okay? So what can you improve in the article? So while you're reading this person's article, you already have knowledge of how to do this thing. So what can you improve from what you've read? Okay, so write all those down too. So if coding is required, do it now. Do you now gain more insight? Like, do you see the code that was written? Is it good enough? Okay, can you improve the way it is written? Can you improve the way that code was structured? All right. So all these are different points that you need to do research on so that you can create a wonderful technical content. All right. So once all this is out, let's look into writing your first draft, because that is where the writing starts. Remember, like I said, research is like 60%. So spend a lot of time on that point. Next, we have writing your first draft. When your first draft should not, writing your first draft should not be that hard, because one, you already have all the insights in your head. You already know what to write, just directly what to pen down, what to improve, what to add, and all of that. You already know all this from your research. So your first draft is more like a brain dump. So all these things that you have accumulated, you just need to pour out whatever is in your brain into your first draft. Don't bother about editing it. Don't bother about making it look shiny. Don't bother about anything, or the grammatical errors. Don't bother about the structuring, all of that. Just make sure that you pour out everything that you have in your brain based on the research that you've done and the thing that is in your brain. So pour it out. All right. So write down all the ideas related to your outline you've created for your content. If you get stuck at this stage, it is normal. You can pause and do more research and come back. So like I said, the research phase is a process, like it repeats. Okay, so you can be writing, you notice that you miss something, you can go back to researching it and then coming back to writing. Okay, so on writing your first draft, actually, the goal here is to get your ideas into writing as quickly as possible without considering the grammatical error, the structuring, etc. So once you're able to get all your ideas on paper, then the next thing is rewriting your first draft. Okay, so at this stage, you need to now come and look at the structuring of your article, look at the grammatical errors, and make sure that you do all the corrections. All right, so here you check the structure of the technical content and make sure it passes the value intended in the brief. Okay, so that is what you're actually doing rewrite for. You're not just rewriting the grammar and everything. You are making sure that the article that you have now actually passes the value that you intended. All the value that you have provided in your research, in your content brief, you make sure that that value is actually passed. And at the same time, the tune, the voices and the tenses align with the audience you defined for your technical content. So if you are writing for beginners, make sure that the tune that you use is good enough for beginners. If you are writing for experts, make sure that your tune is good enough for experts. So that is what you're actually doing at this stage of rewriting your first draft. So it is recommended to include additional resources for your readers after reading your technical content. So if you have more related content on your blog or on your documentation, wherever this article is published, that basically goes deeper into the topic you are talking about, or maybe explains the topic you are talking about in a different format. So this would be a nice place to include those, all right? So there are some things you need to check when rewriting your first draft. I've already mentioned the first important one, which is the value. All right. So most importantly, you need to make sure that your content is readable by rewriting each paragraph to align with your audience if necessary. So I usually give one paragraph, like one space for each foot stop if I'm writing. So if I have a full stop, if it is not a continuous full stop, I just give like one paragraph down. Okay, just to give it spaces. And then remove all the flaws or paragraphs that deviate from your main point and stick to giving value in each paragraph. So make sure that each paragraph is more like a journey. You're coming down, taking the reader from this stage to the next stage to the next stage, just like that, so that the readers don't get bored reading your article. Sometimes when you write article and then you're deviating from this angle to the next angle to this other angle without following a strict pattern, the reader is going to get tired and just skip through the article. Right, so make sure that you drive the reader through each section with your closing remarks on each section. So I really like writing articles this way. So I have experience writing a book, and if you're writing a book, if you finish a particular section, you need to, at that point, introduce the next section and make it interesting so that the reader, is geared up to read the next section rather than, getting bored at that ending part. Okay, so make sure that you drive your readers like that till they stay to the end where you have your call to action. Okay, so your end product, your aim is to make sure that the readers read to the end where you have your call to action. All right, so next, make sure to drive. Okay, I think I've explained now. Okay, so yeah, so this is some of the points that I have for rewriting your first draft. I think next one is fine-tuning and polishing. Let me see. All right. Okay, so we have review your draft. Of course, this is also very, very crucial. So in as much as you've done all the corrections of rewriting your first draft, all right, the next thing is you need to do is to ask for feedback, all right, because it's very important. You can't really tell if your article is bad or not until a few persons goes through it and give you feedback, all right? So you need to make sure that you don't lack people that you need to send articles to review. Even if you are an expert, you still need people to check through it and then give you a few feedback, give you a few pointers as to how to make your article better. Okay? So with that feedback, the next stage is basically to fine tune and publish. So fine tuning there comes in if there are feedbacks. So if there are feedbacks from the people you send your article to, so make sure we implement these feedbacks, right? And if everything is okay, like I said, it's a repetitive process. You implement the changes, send back again, they say, okay, it's fine or it's not fine, change this, change that, you do all that, and at the end, that article is ready for publishing. Okay, so these are like my step-by-step process of on how I produce, good content, and you can follow suit with this process too. So next, let's look at using Markdown. Okay, so Markdown is a lightweight markup language that you can use to add formatting elements to plain text documents. Okay, so Markdown is actually very simple. It's just like the way you use text pad to write plain text documents, but this time you want to add formatting. So formatting, you want to add bold, you want to add italic, you want to add tables, all these different formatting things that you will need to add to your document. Okay, so instead of using drag and drop or selecting and clicking bold and all of these, you use some kind of signs and symbols to add this formatting. Okay, so that's what Markdown does. So why use Markdown? Markdown is very portable. Like you can use it in any device. It doesn't reject almost every device supports Markdown formatting. Okay, so it is platform independent. You can use it anywhere on any platform, mobile, desktop, anyone. Okay, so Markdown is future proof. The reason is it's going to be here like from now to forever because it is easy to use. It is sweet and it is very, very plain. Okay, Markdown is actually everywhere. So you need, just like the way we usually encourage people back in the day to learn Microsoft Word. Okay, so if you are going to be a technical writer or anything on the web at all, you need to know Markdown. Okay. All right, so here we are supposed to do a little demo on Markdown. To do that, we need to visit this website. So I'm going to switch this recording to this website. So I'll stop sharing now. So you can see my screen now. Right? So if you can see my screen nice, here we are with Delinga. So Delinga is one of the best Markdown editor in the entire world. Okay, so it allows you to just write the Markdown document and see the preview right here. Okay, so this is a normal document that you will write. Maybe if you know HTML and CSS, you can quickly do this with HTML, right? But with Markdown, you don't need to write all this CSS, all right? So to have a title, like a very big title, it's done using hash. Okay, so we have normally title H1 down to H6. So you can also represent those with #1, #2, #3, #4. Okay, so like you see here, this is a very big title, just like H1 title, and that's why it's represented with #1 like this. Okay, and then we have the next one, which is 2. So this is more like a smaller title compared to the big one. Okay, so this one is H2 and this one is H3. Okay, so normally this one is supposed to be, this Delinga title H1 is supposed to be bigger, way more bigger than this. But of course, this website has a way of formatting this Markdown so that it looks okay like this. All right, so moving on, you can add links. In case you want to add links to your document, you can do that very simple by, okay, trying to type this, by having first square bracket like this, gives us the title of the link, let's say text, and then normal bracket for the link. So let's say HTTP Google. google.com. Okay, so you can see that we have this text, linking to google.com if I correctly. So we have google.com right here. You can see that, I guess. Okay, so this is how you include links. And this is the example of how they did this one. So you see, they added this banner here or this image here that is a link to another website. So what they did is first, they used an image under where they're supposed to add text. Okay, so square bracket is always for the preview text, but this time they are using a link to an image, right? And then, of course, a link to the image, okay? So if you click on this image, it will take you to this link. Okay, so I'm going to delete this example that I added here. I just wanted to use it to explain this other one. All right, so this that is here is called auth text. Okay, so every image actually have alternative text so that if the image doesn't display, then this text here displays. And that is what you have here. Okay, so the same thing for this other one, build unknown. So this build unknown is actually an image. Of course, you can see the link to the image right here. And then we have build status as the alternative text. And then we have a mapped link that if you click on the image, it takes you to this link. Okay, so every other thing, so paragraphs are represented as normal text. So you don't add anything before paragraphs. You just write your paragraph straight, just like what we have here. And that is what we have right at the preview side. So paragraphs are just plain text, nothing before any paragraph. So you don't add anything. All right. So if you click on enter, like new line like this, it gives you a new paragraph. Okay. Next, we have bullet points. So to implement bullet points in Markdown, it's simple. You just use this sign, hyphen. Okay, so look for your keyboard, type hyphen, and then space, and then start typing. That's going to give you a bullet point like this. But if you want number points, you can just simply use numbers. Just type numbers and it will continue like that, down. Okay, so that is for list. That is how you implement list with Markdown. You can see that it's easy. If you have to do this with HTML, of course, you have to code the HTML for list and stuff. But for Markdown, it's just using this hyphen sign or numbers if you want numbering. All right, so next we have H2 here, which is represented with double hash for H2. And then we have our bullet points again. And that is what you see here, well represented. So next we have our normal paragraph, sorry, right here. So like I said, paragraphs are not, you don't add anything before them, you just type your text directly. And of course, this is a link, but this link is different because it's linking to something in this Markdown or in this document. Okay, and that is done like this. Anytime you add square bracket like this, you want to type a linkable stuff inside it. Okay. All right. So next we have quotes. So remember, you can do quotes on a document and it will have some kind of special effects. So to do that with Markdown, you use greater than sign like this on all the text that you want to put. And you will have, something like this well represented as quotes. Okay. So we can move on and go over each of these, but there is a website that helps you learn all this syntax. Okay, so most importantly, to represent code like a code like this, you simply do that using backticks, 3 backticks, and sometimes you can add the language you want, and sometimes you can leave it. Okay, so I can change this to JS for JavaScript. I can change this to PHP and all of that. But since it is a bash script, I need to change it to SH. Okay, but most importantly, code snippet is represented by 3 backticks. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Right? And then in here, you can write your code. All right? Okay. So moving on here, we have, let's see, you can create a table just like what they have here. To create a table is very simple. You use / to represent table. Okay, so first / and you represent it like this for the title. To have the content of the table, you add this. So anything you add next here is going to be represented as the content of the table. Okay, so this is the title or the headers, and these separate the headers from the table content. Okay, it's still the use of /. And of course, here they represented some of these things with links. All right, so next is all code, and code. And yeah, so there are lots of these simple syntax that you can use, and you can visit a website like Markdown Style to learn all these syntax. Forgotten Markdown Guide. So Markdown Guide has all these different syntax. If you go to Get Started, you can see more information about Markdown, like, of course, what is Markdown and um, the different styles or whatever basic syntax that you can use. For example, we have heading. So we have heading 1 or level 1, which is represented as H1 like this. 2 of these hash is for H2 down to H6, of course, and #6. Okay. So we have line breaks. We have, if you want to lay emphasis, like you want to add bold, you can do that using asterisk or star like this. Okay, so markdownguide.com gives you an explanation to all the different syntax of Markdown. All right, so I'm going to switch this sharing again to the presentation. Okay, so next we are going to look at how to write good posts. Okay, so now what you call post is actually divided into a lot. So we have API reference, we have reference guide, we have how-to guides, we have tutorials. But for now, we are going to look at just two, because these two is basically related a lot to dev marketing. So dev marketers, they basically write blog posts to be able to communicate with developers. Okay. So we are going to look at technical writing, for example. So we'll start with what is a technical tutorial, right? Normally what we call blog posts, those stuff that we write and share. Okay, so technical tutorials are learning oriented in nature. Okay, so if you are writing a technical tutorial, you are intending to pass message or educational value to somebody. Okay, you're not trying to compel the user to follow you on a step-by-step journey. You're trying to give a general knowledge or a general information about a specific thing. For example, technical tutorials are very good in writing things like, what is Nux.js? what is all this, what is X, what is that. You are giving out a general information about whatever topic you want to look at. So the goal of a technical tutorial is to help a learner use a tool, a framework, or a product. Number one, you're trying to help them get a general overview about that product and then how to quickly use it. Okay, so it's basically around quick getting started tutorials. Okay, so it's usually maybe for the first time they are talking about that product, or for the first time they are looking into using that product. The best thing to give to them is a tutorial. It gives them a broad overview of the product and how to quickly get started with it. Okay, so when writing a tutorial, you must see yourself as a teacher. You're trying to help a student learn to do something they have no knowledge about. Okay, so you are a teacher, you are instructing the students, okay, telling them this product or this framework is this is what you use it for, this is the advantages, this is the disadvantages. You're the one doing all the activities, making sure that they understand. Okay, so Danieli Procedure defines tutorials as a lesson that take the reader by hand through a series of steps to complete a project or some kind of article. Okay, so there are some rules actually for writing good technical tutorials. Number one, we say give the learner a full picture of the goal to be achieved. All right, so it is utmost important to be clear about the end result of the goal or the end result to be achieved right from the beginning of a tutorial. So at your introduction, if you're writing about what is this, you already know that at that point you're going to, the next thing is telling them what that thing is, okay? Or the next thing is telling them, okay, before you get to what this thing is, you need to do this, do this, do this. But we will definitely get to what this thing is, okay? So getting to what this thing is the goal. Whatever thing you move down, or however you need to move the user down to getting the goal is, how you write. Okay, but make sure that you give the learner the full picture of the goal to be achieved at the beginning, not at the end. Okay, so this allows the learners to form an idea of what to be achieved right from the start. So you must not underestimate the relaxing sensation this requirement has on the learner. By including the requirements, you empathize with the learner. So always make sure that you state the obvious and then let the user dive deeper into it and achieve it. Okay, so this allows the learner who has absolutely nothing to expect of a new tool or product to feel relieved as they are able to set some expectations and henceforth feel in control and at ease within the learning process or within the learning experience. Okay, so you're delivering to them via your tutorial. So telling them what they will achieve by taking this tutorial is actually going to make them make the right decision if they are going to continue with the tutorial or not. Okay, definitely you don't want people that will read to the end of your tutorial and they will just sign off and say, this is not for me. All right, so you need to make sure that they make that basic decision of knowing that this is what the tutorial is all about, and if it is for me or not, they decide to move further or not. Okay, so that's one of the rules for creating a great tutorial. And then next we have inspire confidence by giving a sense of progress. So this is important, right? If you're writing a bulky text, you need to always give a sense of progress within your paragraphs or within your sectionings. Okay, so technical tutorials involve a lot of hand-holding exercises from the technical writer, this time now from the teacher, okay, because you are now a teacher. Okay, so even after giving the learner a full picture of what the end result is, you can further empathize with the learner by including mini goals. Okay, so if you finish this social thing, you can simply just ask a simple question or maybe a quiz or maybe a goal for them to achieve, because at this time they are learning. Okay, they are not experts. They're not doing how to guide that just takes them directly to what they need to achieve. No, they want to learn from like the beginning. So they need these different goals or these different quizzes to help them reinforce their learning. Okay, so that is telling the learner the result achieved after each step covered in the tutorial. So that could be a good one. Okay, so you finish a particular section, you can simply just tell the user what they've achieved so far if they completely covered up that section. So this gives the learner a sense of achievement that further strengthens their confidence and making them feel more at peace and in control to continue with the next sections or to continue with the next article to read. Okay, so this is actually this is important for lengthy technical tutorials that might involve a lot of steps or bunch of things to complete to arrive at an end result. So you need to make sure that there are this end of section. Okay, this section has ended. What did you achieve at this section? You state it. What are some of the quizzes that you can easily just take, or what are some of the questions you can ask the user, even if they don't answer it, but they have it in mind that if they answer the question correctly, that means they've achieved something while reading that section. And then you introduce the next section peacefully and making sure that you introduce it in a way that the user would want to read it. Okay? All right, so you can do things like including this requirement is like giving a short break. So for resting and delivering mini lectures, you can maybe just, this helps the user to relax a little while thinking through these things that you've asked, or thinking through these achievements that they have achieved in this particular section before moving to the next one. All right. So next one we have provide only minimum explanation. So there's a type of post that is called explanation. Okay. So this type of post goes deeper into explaining concepts. All right. So if you're writing tutorials, you only need to reference these explanation contents. Like wiki pages are actually filled with lots of explanations. All right. But sometimes they also link to a content base where the real content actually comes from that has a lot more explanations. So if you're writing tutorials, right, your aim is to deliver the result or the goal of that tutorial is not to explain a lot. Okay, so you just give a simple explanation, and if there are more explanation that the user needs to know, you can simply link to it, okay, and move on to your goal. Okay, there's a reason technical tutorials are called tutorials. They are meant to provide practical knowledge and not theoretical knowledge. Okay, so in other words, except absolutely necessary, unless it is important, resist the need to explain concepts. Okay, so I'm not saying you should not give maybe one paragraph or two explanation about the concept, but don't go deeper so that you don't deviate from your tutorial. Okay, instead you would do well to point the learner to other articles or reference or wiki pages or whatever that explains the concepts thoroughly. Okay, so this is important as it helps the learner stay focused on the goal at hand instead of getting distracted by reading longer explanations to a specific concept. Okay, so next we have avoid alternatives. So if you are writing a tutorial, make sure that you do a lot of research to not include lots of alternatives. The reason for this is because it is distracting. Okay, if you are writing a tutorial, always avoid this sentence of it depends. We use that a lot to cover a lot of things, but always avoid it depends. Make sure to pick one out of those list of things that it depends on, and make sure you do your research enough to cover it thoroughly, and let the user be able to face this particular point and go through it to the end, instead of pointing the user to different other angles that it depends on. Focus on one angle and maybe tell the user at the end of the tutorial that they can reference these other ones if they want to. Okay, so as a software engineer, you probably know that achieving a certain result can be implemented in several ways. This is if you are a software engineer. We have several ways. We have many ways of arriving at a particular point. Okay. In technical tutorials, you must understand that it is best to stick with a single way of achieving the desired result. Okay, so the reader wants to use this particular way to achieve that result. If there is other alternative, they can go and read other alternative, or you can link it maybe at related post or further reading section. Okay, but while you want the user to achieve a specific thing, don't always list lots of alternatives. Okay, so including, for example, if you're writing a technical tutorial, including several implementations to achieve a given result or same result is very confusing. Okay, so for example, to achieve 1 + 1 equals to 2, you are including lots of different angles or lots of different ways. It's confusing for the user to be able to pick one, or for the user to be able to pick the best one. So make sure that you do your own research, pick the best one and cover it. All right, so moving on, lastly, we have ensure the tutorial works on all platforms. So if you're writing a technical content that includes codes or whatever, make sure that the code actually works. So don't include codes that doesn't work, or don't include examples into your technical tutorials that doesn't work, or examples that is going to work today and tomorrow is not going to work again. So even if that is going to happen, make sure that you tell the user to always use the latest version, or tell the user that this content will be updated or whatever. Keep the content updated, keep the code or the examples updated so that you don't mislead users into using something that is wrong or outdated. All right, so lastly on writing good technical tutorial, we have summary. So every technical tutorial should have a good summary. More like combining everything that you've taught into a single or more paragraph to summarize everything that you've talked about in that tutorial. Okay? All right, so next we have how to guide. We have how to guide. And how to guide is another form of blog post that technical writers write a lot. Okay. So how to guide basically gives, it is more like directions that takes the reader through the steps required to solve a real problem. So this is a definition from Danieli. Okay, so how to guides are problem-oriented in nature, in contrast to tutorials that are learning-oriented in nature. Okay, so immediately you see an article that says how to, you already know that the next thing is how to solve a specific problem. Okay, so it is problem-oriented in nature, and the end result is to solve a specific problem. Okay, so there are ways that you write good how-to guides, and one of the rules is to describe a sequence of steps. Okay, so unlike tutorials, how-to guides are not end-to-end guides. All right, so they don't start from kind of beginning and then intermediate and then to advanced, or start from the beginning to where you solve the problem. Okay, so rather they begin at the middle of things. They can just start at the middle of things. For example, how to implement custom props, how to implement custom computed. So here I'm talking about Vue.js, right? You don't even know I'm talking about Vue.js, because I didn't start from Vue.js down to maybe where we have computed properties. Okay, I just start somewhere that I see a problem, and I'm trying to solve it directly. Okay, so that is how to guides are. We can just pick a specific problem out of an array of, a topic or a large topic and just solve that specific problem. Okay. Now, to solve it, you describe a series of other steps in order to arrive at a reasonable stop. So how to basically, number one, step one, do this, step two, do that, step three, do this, and you have your answer. That is how to guide is supposed to be. That's how you're supposed to write it. So you don't include all those, okay, if you want to solve computed property, what is computed properties, what is Vue.js that computed property comes out from. You don't include all those, explanation. You might point users to it so that they have full knowledge in case they are complete beginners, but the main aim is to simply solve the problem that is at hand. All right, so next we have stick to one problem. It's very important. I see some articles, you see how to do this, and then once you start reading, they have different angles to how to solve that problem that is stated. That is not a good how to guide. You need to make sure that you stick to one problem. You use one article to solve one problem, not using one article to solve so many problems. Okay, so if you're talking about how to create computed properties, just stick to how to create computed properties. Don't talk about how to create computed properties and watch properties. No, stick to that one problem and make sure that you solve that problem very well. All right, so your goal with how to guide is to attend to a particular problem. If you need to attend to two problems, then you need to make that two different articles, like two different how to guides. Okay, so the flexibility you allow here, however, is that you can provide more than one solution to a problem. Okay, so you can have different angles to one specific problem, not solving two problems in one how to guide. Okay, so next, don't explain concepts. Don't worry about explaining what is Vue.js. Don't worry about explaining what is computed property much. You can give a practical insight to it so that the user have a base point. But giving a full explanation to the concepts are not really allowed, because that is not, the user won't even read it, because the user is already having an urgent problem to solve, and the user comes directly to see the solution. So most time, users actually skip through all those explanations and go directly to where the solution is. All right, so that ends the how to guide section. And with these two, right, you can be assured that you can write good articles as a developer marketer. Okay, and make sure that you are centering this article into developers, because sometimes different articles need different ways of writing them. All right, and what we've explained so far is if you are targeting developers mainly. All right, so that brings us to technical content distribution, right? So technical content distribution is a very broad topic, and I didn't want to talk a lot about it because I know different companies does this in different formats, right? And different people promote their content in different ways. Okay, so I'm just going to list two channels, and I'm going to explain these two channels a lot more in depth. Okay, so first we have Twitter, we have LinkedIn. Okay, so we understand what Twitter is. Twitter is a microblogging platform. It is mostly used for short content and includes a lot of now content, like content you post for now, and after now it might perish or it might not be interesting again. Okay, so if you people, okay, so first, the audience that you define on that your content is going to help you determine where you need to run this promotion mostly. Okay, so if your audience are mostly beginners, right? If they are mostly beginners, I'm using that for example. Okay, so I would say, okay, break down this article into valid points. All right, pick out points out of this article and share them on Twitter. So you don't just, I see some people, what they do, once they write article, right, they just automatically share it to Twitter, where they have the summary and the link. It's nice, but I don't do that, and I wouldn't really encourage that, except you're doing general sharing to your audience is fine. So what I do with my content sharing strategy is once I write content, I already know who this content is for and the target. So I pick out the points out of this content, I break it down again. This is what we call content repurposing. I break this content down into real valid points, and then I share it on Twitter. And sometimes I include the link right there, or sometimes I include it as a thread. Okay, the main important thing is to create awareness about your content. It is not for click-throughs. Okay, so Twitter for me is not for click-throughs. It is mostly to create awareness about my content. Excuse me. All right. So that's for Twitter. Make sure that you bring out points out of your content and share that point on Twitter. Include the link to the content if you want. All right. So for LinkedIn, LinkedIn is more professional based or focused. LinkedIn is more professional focused. So what you do here is you go deeper a little into creating an argument about your content. So you don't just post, like copy a lot of things from your article and post it on LinkedIn. No. You create an argument around the topic you're talking about. Okay? Create an argument, share a snippet of the solution, and then add a link at the comments to where they can read the full content. Okay? So for example, if you write a blog post on, let's say, Node.js 3, for example, you write the blog post around that. So you can create an argument like why Nox 3 is the best, or why Nox 3 is not the best right now for you. And then you start talking about that argument, and then put in a little solution, and then put in a link under the comments for them to read more. Okay, so the reason for this is LinkedIn is more like a place that you want professionals to air their views on your content. Okay, so it's not really where beginners can just jump in and skim through your article. You want to create an argument so that people actually listen to what you have to share, and then go through it detail by detail to pick out the points that you have to share. And of course, this kind of people that have the time to go through your article because of the arguments that you presented are the people that actually buys from you, because at the end they see the solution down on how you are problem for them. All right, so content repurposing is a lot of work. Like I said, distributing your content is like 20% of the content. So my primary channels are actually Twitter and LinkedIn, but most of the time I don't really share anymore, because before I post the content, I've already written an argument around it, or maybe I've already posted a snippet about the content. Okay, so again, you can repurpose your content into video, like using all these AI tools to generate short, nice videos around your content and share them on YouTube or share them on TikTok or any place that you know that your audience are. You should have already identified where developers of your products are found, and then you go there with your content.
Yeah, I was saying, would you like to maybe give a summary, or is there anything you'd like to share before I start asking the questions?
Not really. I just want to say thank you for having me. Let's get started.
Okay, right. Okay, so the one, how do you gather information for technical documentation?
Okay, so it's all research, right? Let me break this down. So I don't know if I mentioned previously during the class that technical writing is a big part of documentation, technical documentation, right? And as a technical writer, 60% of the time you'll be doing research, right? And that point or that research is exactly how you have content for your technical documentation. So if you are to document about a particular product, let's say you want to document your company's newly built project or product. First, you need to do research on your company. You need to understand their mission, their vision. You need to understand the people, the specific individuals that they are targeting. Even while you get to know these individuals, you need to also go deeper into understanding their personas. So it goes a lot deeper into getting to understand the niche that your company is totally focusing on, all right? So that when you have this knowledge, you can be able to come up with content that solves problem directly to these people, okay? Yeah, so research is the number one way that I personally get content for my documentation. So during this stage, I can use different methods. Number one is mainly, having one-on-one interview with um, the founders, for example, of the company. And maybe if I'm documenting a specific product or a specific feature, then I can have interviews with the subject matter experts on that specific feature. Okay, but if I'm to document, like they didn't have any documentation engineer before now, I am the first person. So I go with understanding, from the chain of command down to the least person that builds the product. So I try to understand their point of view and why they're actually building this. So with all this information, I already have something to come up with. But if I'm just writing a simple article, maybe there is a documentation already, but I just want to add something, or I just want to create an article that solves a specific problem. So first, if I don't know about that, maybe it's my first time, what I do is to just use Google. I search that problem online, like Google, and then I read the 5 first articles. Like I make sure I do that keenly. I read the first 5 articles, and while reading, I don't just read it to gain knowledge. Of course, it is to gain knowledge, but while reading, I pick points such as what the article really, really, really focuses on, like what is the problem this article is solving. Now, when I know the problem and I'll look at the article if it really solves this problem. Now, if it does it solve it to advanced people or beginners or intermediate? So I put this down and I look at the things that the article did not do right, like some of the points that they would have mentioned or some of the things that they would have added that they didn't add. I write this down, and then if there are comments, I look at the comments of the individuals and see the pain points that they might be having. All right, and from there, I'm having ideas on how to actually structure my own article. Okay, I do this to 5 first articles, and if you do this also, you'll be able to gain insights on the content you need to add on your documentation. All right.
Okay, so I basically just summarize everything you said. First, you need to understand the mission and vision of the brand or products. based on what exactly you're writing about. Then hold interviews with stakeholders, product owners, whoever was involved in the process of making that software or product. Then also try to gather some form of information. Um, the other ways you also mentioned was using search engines, and you noted your method of reading the first five articles to find out if the if those articles actually solve the problem that you are trying to solve. So great. I think everyone else can access this on the chat, and you can also take down notes as well. Okay, so we'll go to the next question. So you've mentioned some ways that you actually do research, but then are there any sources that you would recommend for this research? I know you mentioned using Google to type in and then um, read the first five articles that you find. But then aside that, are there any sources that you'd recommend for research and to gather information?
You mean sources? I don't understand. Like, is it like a place I go to get mostly solution to my problems? Or please just
Yes,
clear me.
yes, please. That's what I mean.
Yeah, so it depends though. There are some documentation that you don't have a source to go to, right? The only source you have is the people you interview to make it up. But of course, if it is a general problem or problem that is public, I read a lot of documentation, right? I read, like if I'm looking for the structure on how to structure documentation. Okay, so I read other people's documentation. I like Laravel's documentation a lot. So I look at how they structured their documentation and then I draw insight from there. Then I read a lot of technical writing blogs. Okay, so notable one is Technical Writing HQ. I read their blog a lot. So that helps me with the general idea of technical writing. It gives me a lot of insight on what technical writing is all about. And yeah, so I also write a lot about technical writing. So writing about it gives me the perspective of explaining things better. Okay, which can also serve as a form of research ground for me. So if I need something, I go back to what I've written before. So aside from these, I think I mentioned one of my favorite technical writing blog, which is Technical Writing HQ. I also read, let me just look at the list. This. There's this guy's blog that I read a lot. I also read I'll Rather Be Writing. Of course, the technical writing blog is nice. I also read ClickHelp. So ClickHelp has this technical writing blog specifically. So I read those guys a lot. And then I read TechWheel. So they give you resources for content management as well as technical writing. Okay, so there's a lot of them, but these are the ones that I like. Technical Writing HQ.com.
Yeah. I think we'll get those links and share. I'm experiencing some network lag here. Okay, can you
Yeah,
hear me? Can you hear me now?
yeah. So specifically, if you're looking for
All right.
document, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So specifically, if you're looking for documentation rather than technical writing, you understand? There are two different things. So for documentation, I read Docs by Design. It's a very nice blog. I also read I Create Docs. Okay, so these two are great for documentation specifically.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so the next question is about an emerging trend, AI, right? So there are for example, I know of a brand that is really keen on not allowing their technical writers use any form of AI at all. And then they have like these platforms where they go to check an entire article. If it has like a large percentage of AI, the article is flagged and then they have to, go back and write it again. But they say the AI, of course, is there to help with the whole writing and all of that. But then with this AI, right? Do you think it really helps with documentation? Does it limit the most important things that really need to be added to a document? Um, and for people who clearly eliminate the idea of AI, how then can we properly maintain documentation? How can people write better without relying so much on AI?
Listen, I don't have a strong opinion on this. First, without AI, people were creating documentation that were great, that were great, right? And with AI, it just advances the process. But one thing that AI helps me to do is brainstorming sections, right? So when you want to come up with something, it's really difficult to sit down, think, and come up with new ideas. So so that is where AI actually excels. It gives you a kind of an easy way to brainstorm. You understand? So you go into AI, pour out all your frustration, and there's something coming out. And from there, you have an idea of the next move to take. So this is where I see AI really helping. But when it comes to using AI to write content, first, it depends on the type of content that you are writing. So if you are writing a story from you or from your product, from your company to the next individual, AI might not excel in story writing because of the nuances, because of the way you are going to present it as a human being. It might not really be something that AI would do perfectly. But again, AI can write this article and then you edit it. So you have to now measure the time it takes you to edit. If it can be less than the time it will take you to write and edit. But if it is more, then there is no need using AI. You just go for it. You just write it by yourself and then edit it. But again, like I said, for some articles, for example, how to guide articles, this step to that step to this step, and the problem is solved. You can use AI. There's nothing wrong with that. I am on the opinion that you can use AI for some articles that is the same thing. Like, let's say if you want to install Vue.js, for example, the step is almost going to be the same thing with everybody. So AI can come in such kind of article, and then you just sit back and do the corrections. So one thing that people dismiss around AI is, number one, AI does not include, except maybe you specifically, tell AI to do it. AI does not include facts. Like, as a human being, you can say 20% of people does this, and this research was from so place. All right. So AI can do something like that, but the fact may not be correct, or the facts where that research is based might not really be correct. So you can just go and update that point in place of editing. So AI can help you write, but with AI, you can actually write better. First, it's going to help you with brainstorming, making it quick for you to have ideas to move on with. Second, it's going to help you write, but like I said, you can measure the time that it takes you to edit AI content to make it look human, to make it have human feel, and see if it is more or less. So if it is more, then don't use AI. But if it is less, that means it saves you time. So of course you can go with AI. For companies that totally dismiss AI, I don't specifically know why. Maybe they have their reason, because AI can do a lot of copywriting. All right, AI can do a lot of copywriting, and some company might not. Of course, no company likes copywriting. So if you are not able to deduce all these copywriting stuff that comes with AI, then it becomes a problem because you're going to be hit hard on Google. Okay, so this is my opinion on it. I don't dismiss it, and I don't say you should use it without having the human feel or human editor on it.
So my next question is about version control, especially for let's say for a certain product, certain developer products. There may be updates to that product, and then you have to improve on what has already been written. I think that's what version control means in my own opinion. But then, what are some strategies, or how are you able to manage that, and how do you act on those updates? Do you clearly remove what was written before and come up with a new one? What are the strategies for maintaining version control on certain documentation?
All right, let me break this down. Version control is not about the updating. The updating is updating, but version control is more like um, you have original, right? And then you have a new version. The new version could be either you delete something or you add something, right? And it could be with a lot of teams or team members. So you could have another writer updating this particular document, or another writer deleting something. So that management of these different changes is version control part. But let's talk about editing first, or let's talk about updating content, which generally is maintaining the content, right? So yeah, of course, content goes out of date. If it stays for a long time, the information might be a little bit out of date, and you might need to update it. So to do that, first, you need to get to understand the new knowledge. All right. So this content solves this problem at that time. Now there's new ways. There are new ways. There are new methods. There are, new things that is now in place. We need to update this content. We need to update this information to reflect this new thing. So first thing you need to do is to understand the new thing. All right. And the second thing is to understand the old thing. And then the third thing is to update. So updating doesn't mean that you need to rewrite or remove everything that was here and then bring a new thing. So it can come to that, assuming the old thing doesn't really gives any value anymore. You can wipe that out and bring a new one. But if there are some values that are found in that old article, you can simply just infuse the new thing into this old article. All right. But version control parts is how do you manage a team of writers, assuming you are like the head of documentation engineer? How do you manage other writers updating content or updating your documentation, making changes, deleting and adding? How do you manage all that so that you don't have conflicts? So the first thing in my team, the first thing I do is education. Okay, so I try to educate everybody on how to actually make changes to a version controlled system. So if we have our documentation pushed to maybe Git or Subverb or any of these version control systems, how do you work with it? Like, how do you actually work with a team of people using a central phone can save you a ton of changes that you have to make, ton of corrections that you have to make, and ton of back and forth with your team members. So once everybody is on board with that knowledge, then you see that it's going to work smoothly when it comes to updating and editing your documentation. So you can also set up some pipelines that deploys any changes to maybe a staging environment, and then all the members of the team, whenever someone pushes their changes, it deploys it to a staging environment. Everybody in the team sees it, and then one person approves these changes, and then it goes live to the user. But first, education is very important with team members when you're introducing them to version control system. And for editing, of course, for updating, of course, I've mentioned, have a general knowledge of the new thing that is invoked, and then understand how to infuse it into what you already have before. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, yes, it does. So moving on to the next. While you were talking about gathering information on technical documentation, I think one thing you mentioned was to understand if it's for if it solves a problem for advanced users or for beginners. So now, in a case where an article is basically for a wider audience, including advanced and then beginners, how are you able to structure the content so that it appeals to both of them?
Right. So you're a technical writer, don't write like that. But anyways, if you don't have a choice, the first thing to do is to take them through a journey. All right. So take them through some form of a journey, start from beginner, intermediate, and then advanced. Something like that. Okay, so if you look at some documentation, the most important page in the documentation is the getting started page. All right. So not everybody goes there, or if you have visited the documentation, let's say 20 times, you won't go to the getting started page again. Because at this point, you are no longer a beginner, or you're no longer new to the documentation. So you know exactly where to go to. Okay, so that same idea can come into technical writing when it comes to content writing itself. So if you're writing for a wider audience, or you don't want to do the research to identify specifically who you're writing for. Now, this is a bad approach actually. But if you really want to do it this way, the first thing is to identify the segment. What I mean by that is the journey that you're going to take the reader through. Okay, so there's something they call, God, I call it, jumper in your article. I don't know the real English name for it. So when you write and then you finish the beginner's part, you can, during maybe your closing remark at that point, you can tell the reader the next thing to expect. Okay, so this happens a lot if you're writing a book. So when you finish a particular chapter, you talk about the next chapter, what to expect. You understand? So that helps the user understand or know that, okay, I already know this thing that this person is going to talk about in this chapter. I can jump to the next one, or I can read it. Okay, so that is going to be very helpful. It shows you or the reader that you are taking them through a journey. First, if you are a beginner, you start from the beginning part of the article, and then you read down. And each section, you tell them what you're going to learn in the next one. And that gives them a kind of a way to skip through or to skim through if they are already above the beginner's level. I don't know if that answers the question. So generally, you take every reader through a journey and let them decide where they want to start from by giving them these hooks and these jumpers inside your content. I don't know what it's called, but I call it jumper. Sorry.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I think that's pretty much understandable. All right. So now talking about feedback, you've clearly written the article and it answers your question, but then um the audiences kind of give some form of feedback, probably something like this isn't well explained or they don't clearly understand this. How do you incorporate that feedback into the article or documentation that you write?
Yeah, that's actually, if you have people that gives you feedback, that's really the best thing that can happen to you. You are writing for somebody, right? Your entire reason why you're writing is for somebody. Imagine if that person comes to tell you that what you wrote for me, this thing is missing, this thing is missing, this thing is missing. That is the best thing that you can actually get, because at that point, it gives you now, you're not in the dark anymore, or you're not trying to use ChatGPT to draw insights or draw ideas. You're now getting these suggestions, these feedbacks from somebody that you actually want, that you actually wrote the article for, and somebody you really want to capture with your article. So incorporating these should be easy, it should be the fastest thing that you do. So just take what he said, right, and look at what you've written, and then compare. You understand? If his suggestion is better, you incorporate it. Sometimes why I said if his suggestion is better is because sometimes, right, you might be writing for a specific niche, and then within that niche, there are lots of different persons, right? So this person gives you this suggestion, this other person gives you this suggestion, and then you have scattered suggestions like that on a particular thing. So it might be difficult to actually pick one and then ignore the others. Okay, so you need to have strong knowledge about what you've written about, and then compare between all the suggestions that you have and pick the one that is going to be beneficial to everybody, or align what you've written in a way that is going to be beneficial to everybody. Okay, so I don't know, feedback is one important thing. So if you have it, just go ahead and compare, contrast, and implement.
Great, that's nice. That's
I'm
awesome.
done.
Thank you. I got that. Okay. Um so for the final question, this is like taking us back to the very first question again, ways you gather information to write. I think this question is somehow relatable as well, but then what steps do you take to ensure that the articles you write actually comply with the brand standards or the industry standards?
First step I think I follow the style guide of the company. All right, so I think to give you more context on this. First, like I said, like the most important thing about writing is not to just pen down things. If you want to pen down things, just pick up your diary and pen down things, right? But if you want to write, you need to know who you're writing for. It's important. All right, you cannot write for everybody, because that will make the article. Your article won't have a base. So my friend taught me this. You can't write for everybody. All right. You can't write for um, a group of individuals. You understand? Because when you say a group of it basically contains lots of persons that decide to come into one group. So you need to pick one specific person. Like as if you're talking to one person. Let's go deeper into this. If you are writing for a CEO, of which type of company? All right, so we can have a CEO in a tech company. We can have a CEO in a fintech, not tech again, in a financial company. So which CEO are you talking about? Right, you need to go a step deeper into saying, okay, I'm writing for a tech or a developer-focused CEO. Now, going further down into that, this CEO, what is his age range? You understand? Does he have children? Is it busy? Is he a busy CEO, or is somebody that has time? Is it someone that likes to read? Like you need, so that you know exactly how to. If it is somebody that doesn't like to read, you don't have to kill the person with lots of text. So you just give the person short stuff and go straight to the point. Okay, so the entire idea is to identify specifically the number one person that you are looking into his eyes and writing this article for. All right, and once you are able to do that, the next stage is to understand the reason why you're writing, and the reasons why you're writing. So to get those reasons, number one, you need to know what your company is trying to sell. How would this article help them sell that thing? Okay, so this gives you reasons. How would what you're writing help your company? First, articles, depending on the type of article that you're writing, has different things that they do. So I could help you list. So we have bottom of the funnel content, top of the funnel content, and middle of the funnel content, right? So if you write things like listicles, so listicles are articles like top 5 different opinions on backend engineering. All these top 5, top 20, top 100. These are all listicles, and they are found under top of the funnel, because this article are meant to give general overview of a particular thing. Okay, so it doesn't drive the user into believing or into choosing or into believing in one thing. It gives them a general overview of the entire thing, and they will not have to decide. So when they want to decide, they will go deeper into reading about each thing specifically. Okay, so when they go down into reading about each thing specifically, they're already in the middle of the funnel. Okay, so this kind of content are different. This kind of content are things like, ultimate guides on this particular concept, comprehensive guide on this particular concept. So, and then we have bottom of the funnel. So at this point, the user has already decided on one thing to pick. So he needs more information, as in pricing, what other people are saying about this particular thing, where to buy this thing or where to get this thing. This kind of articles helps them, would let you know that this person has already made up his mind to purchase this particular thing. So while you understand these things, right? While you understand these things, if you want to write, so you will now know that, okay, this article is for this particular person, and this person is at this level. So I need to detail my content in a way that it helps my business or help the company, either in generating lead or converting lead or converting to sales. So these different benefits that your company can gain from your article. Okay, so this idea comes as a result of the research that you do before you write. So I don't know if that answers the question or if I deviate a little from the question that you asked.
No, I don't think you deviated. It also sheds more light on what you really mean by making research before writing. Um, you know exactly who you're writing for. Pick that exact person and write as if you are directing the message to him or her personally. So yes,
Yes.
yes, that answers my question. Thank you so much for that. Um, so that was the last question that we have prepared, but then I'll still give you a few more minutes for anyone who wants to, say anything or who wants to ask any other questions. So we can go ahead.
All right. Let's hear you.
Okay, so he says his question is about how to gather feedback on his technical writing.
Okay, the quickest answer is to ask for it. If you don't ask, you won't get. So ask for it. Or if the sole purpose of that article is to get feedback, coin it in a way that triggers people to give you feedback. At the end of the article, kind of say some few things like, drop a comment, drop feedback. What do you think? Because the general idea of getting feedback is if you don't ask, people will not give it to you. Okay. How gather feedback on my presentation? How to gather
Okay,
feedback.
Geoffrey, does that answer your question? Okay, all right, you said yes. Okay, then. I don't think anyone else has any other question. So thank you so much, Solomon, for coming here to talk to answer our questions and then to also give like a proper finish to the technical writing model. This was really awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.